morning everyone and welcome to the webinar. My name is John Reid. I'm the CEO of the National Manufacturing Institute Scotland. It's great to see so many people signed up this morning. I believe there are over 110, a mixture of the construction industry and the manufacturing sector on the call today. Clearly, the manufacturing and construction industry particularly are having an extremely hard time with the supply chain issues that we're all aware of. And this session today is about bringing us together to look at how we can help and support each other to try and build solutions and provide options to overcome some of these supply chain issues. It's also an opportunity for us to give a bit of an overview into what kind of support is available for companies and organisations who are willing to step up to that challenge. Today, we've got a list of interventions and speakers coming from the Minister for Business, Trade, Tourism and Enterprise, Ivan McKee. We have Benoit Fernandez, one of the specialists from the National Manufacturing Institute Scotland, Sam Hart from the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, Stephen Good, the CEO of the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, and Jerome Finlayson from Scottish Enterprise, and Triona Tiernan from Scottish Futures Trust. So before we start the proceedings, I'd just like to take you through a few housekeeping points. So first of all, this session is being recorded and it'll be available on YouTube early next week, hopefully. If you'd like to ask any questions or leave comments, which we hope you will do because that's the value in these kind of sessions, we'd like you to click on questions on your control panel and type in your comment or your question and then just press send. There are going to be a couple of poll questions coming up during the webinar and they'll come up automatically on your screen and you'll get about 30 seconds to answer those. And clearly your feedback and your contribution is vital to the quality of this event. And even if we don't manage to cover all the points or questions that you raised today, we'll certainly take them on board and we'll build that into the work that we do from this point onwards. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to the Minister, Ivan McKee, and Ivan's going to take us through a view of the challenge that's facing industry today. So over to you, Ivan. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, John, and I hope everybody can hear and see me. And thanks very much for coming on this morning. A great turnout for this session, and I'm really delighted that NMIS and the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre have taken the initiative to organise this event, which really brings together, as John said, the construction and manufacturing sectors to look at what we can do together to tackle some of the problems that are facing us. And you will be much more aware of these challenges than I am concerning the shortages of construction materials, and that then leading on to not only availability challenge but pricing challenges, and as a consequence putting a lot of risk into the supply chain for major and minor construction projects up and down the country. So it's an issue that affects everybody, affects the whole economy, and is quite a concern for us. Obviously, the reasons for these shortages, and I've been doing a bit of work to try and understand it as best I can. Much of it is global impact. Upturning global demand is obviously driving significant issues. The unpredictability of where that demand is going is making it difficult for supply chains to understand and respond to that. Logistics challenges as a consequence of COVID and of course of Brexit are of course exacerbating that, and all kinds of knock-on effects, be it shortage of HGV drivers or container availability or many other aspects, are making those problems worse. As I say, a lot of this is difficult for businesses to understand where it's going to go and respond accordingly as they might in more normal times. Now, from my perspective, government's got a role to do everything we can to help smooth those waters as best we can across a whole range of interventions, and we're taking steps where we can to be able to address those. Much of it, of course, is our global challenges where we do have limited capability, but where we can, we're very much focused on addressing those issues, be it around about skills availability and logistics we talked about, to help businesses, and putting pressure on UK government around about the visa regime and other aspects, or in making sure that some of the Brexit-induced challenges are mitigated or delayed as best possible. But closer to home, we're very, very focused on what we can do to work with businesses, individual businesses and supply chains to be able to take more control of these challenges into our own hands. I've been leading a short life working group looking specifically at material shortages in the construction sector, which has been meeting weekly for the last couple of months. I've had several meetings across a whole range of commodities with manufacturers based in Scotland and further afield, and logistics and distribution companies involved in the supply chains to help understand those challenges a bit better, but also, as I said, very importantly, to understand what we can do in very real terms to be able to address those. We are very focused as a government on what we can do to build up Scotland's manufacturing capability, hence the support for NMIS and other initiatives across the country. And part of that is looking at opportunities for Scottish manufacturing businesses to be able to step into the breach, increase capacity, increase capability, and make investments that allow us in these times of challenge to also identify the opportunities that are there. And to seize those opportunities. For businesses in such an uncertain environment, it can clearly be often difficult to understand what those opportunities look like, understand what support is available, and to understand whether those investments that you may want to make are something that's going to be sustainable in the longer term. So I think again the role of government in being able to support there in any way we can, through the support from NMIS on the innovation side and the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, through addressing skills challenges and working with our colleges to face into that space, or support across investment opportunities to be able to enable businesses that might not otherwise have been able to do so to be able to start to manufacture commodities and build up indigenous capability within Scotland. So this is something we're very keen on, but of course we can't do that on our own. It very much relies on businesses coming forward, giving us the information as to what it is you require, helping us to understand better where those opportunities are, and to make it clearer for us what we can do to help support you to take advantage of those opportunities and across that journey. So the session today, I think, is hugely important, bringing together quite a range of businesses from both the construction sector, but very, very importantly, manufacturing businesses that may be able to support in this area. And we're very keen that we get down to the detail of this with a great range of speakers and the opportunity to discuss and answer questions and work together. Because very often addressing these opportunities will come from a number of businesses working together and getting support from the public sector organisations that are there to deliver our enterprise agencies, NMIS, the Innovation Centre, and the government and others. So very keen on my part to see how today's session goes. Very interested to hear what you've got to say how you see the challenges, and how, very importantly, you see those opportunities, and very keen to be able to take specific actions out of the session this morning that we can work on with you to be able to do what we can to address not only the short-term shortages of construction materials, but also very much what we can do in the medium and long term to increase the capacity and the capability within Scottish businesses and supply chains to be able to support the sector now and going forward. So with that, I'll hand back over, and as I say, very much looking forward to the rest of the session this morning. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ivan. That was great. A really good introduction to today's session, and obviously good to hear the level of commitment and support from Scottish Government. I'm sure that'll reassure people, and it'll be, I'm sure, critical going forward. I think the other thing that you managed to do there was not only outline the problems, which I'm sure chimed with a lot of the people on the call today, but also there are opportunities here. As ever, you know, there's a bit of a crisis going on, but there are opportunities that can come out of these kind of disrupted environments. And hopefully we've got people on the call who are up for the cut. Certainly NMIS is here to support the manufacturing sector, and the guys from the Csic will do their very best to help the construction team. So I think we've got an opportunity here to start something quite positive that we can work on in the near future. So thanks, Ivan. Appreciate you taking the time out today to kick us off. So now what I'd like to do is move on to our next speaker, who is Benoit Fernandez. So Benoit is one of the specialists from the National Manufacturing Institute Scotland, and he's going to talk to us about the supply landscape and where some of the opportunities for manufacturers could come from. So thanks, Benoit. Over to you.
Thank you, John. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay, let me share my screen.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can see that. Okay. So good morning, everyone. As John said, my name is Benoit Fernandez, and I'm Anchoring Innovation Manager at NMIS. So the National Manufacturing Institute Scotland, it's a place where industry, academia, and the public sector work together on groundbreaking manufacturing research to transform productivity levels, make companies more competitive, and boost the skills of our current and future workforce, making Scotland and the UK a global leader in advanced manufacturing. NMIS, it's at the heart of the Advanced Manufacturing Innovation District Scotland in Renfrewshire, and it's operated by the University of Strathclyde and supported by Scottish Government, Scottish Enterprise, Highland and Highlands Enterprise, High Value Manufacturing Catapult, Skills Development Scotland, Scottish Funding Council, and Renfrewshire Council. So the NMIS group is a combination of core NMIS capability, specialist technology centers, and an active network of partners in the manufacturing community. The team works with manufacturing businesses of all sizes from across the manufacturing and engineering sector to increase productivity by reducing barrier to innovation, stimulate investment and increase manufacturing competitiveness, to catalyze job creation and strengthen supply chain links, inspire and attract talent, and equip current and future workforce with the skills and the business needs. As shown on the slide, we have 2 specialist centers open now and 3 new capabilities that will be integrated within the new NMIS building next year. The Advanced Forming Research Center is a globally recognized center of excellence in innovative manufacturing technologies, R&D, and metal forming and forging research. The Lightweight Manufacturing Center focuses on working with and developing novel lightweight solutions to help manufacturing businesses face and overcome the challenges of the modern day world. The Digital Factory will be a place to explore and develop the next generation of manufacturing technologies to help solve the engineering challenges of the future. The Manufacturing Skills Academy will offer advanced manufacturing training and development opportunities for individuals at all levels of their career. And finally, the Collaboration Hub will be a unique environment that manufacturers of all sizes and from all sectors can use to work together with research partners and the public sector to innovate and grow their businesses. NMIS is also at the heart of Scotland's manufacturing research and development sector and is the country's only high-value manufacturing catapult center, one of only 7 in the UK. So first, I would like to point out the difference between supply chain and supply base. The supply chain is a complete linked network of suppliers that are involved in the manufacturing of a product, where the supply base is the individual suppliers involved in supplying, manufacturing, materials, components, assembly, and services. So having a resilient supply chain for the construction sector will be based on a robust supply base and the ability for that supply base to adapt to changing market environments. Changes could be over long periods in response to long-term trends such as environmental legislation or economic shock such as COVID or Brexit. The UK manufacturing supply base is under many national and international pressure and has been in overall decline in the UK for many years. The manufacturing supply base and the supply chains need to be responsive to changes. This requires diversification, the ability to move into new markets and sectors, adoption of new manufacturing processes, technologies, and business model. In other terms, they need to be resilient. So sometimes people confuse robustness and resilience. Robustness being how much can you take before you fall down, and resilience being how long does it take for you to stand up again, recover, and regain control. On the work we have carried out within the HVMC network, we define resilience as the sum of feasibility, robustness, and adaptability. The visibility, we must have information to help us make decisions. For example, who supplies to who, what is onshore and offshore, how is information exchanged, or who are the decision makers. Robustness is a prerequisite for resilience. We must be able to take the hit. And finally, about adaptability, this is how we get back on our feet or even transform ourselves. To be adaptable, we must have a capability, skills, and healthy ecosystem with all the necessary actors present to create the change. So how can NMIS support? So at the company level, we can provide operational and business support. And at sector level, we can provide supply chain or supply-based mapping and help identifying gaps. Our services are developed around 4 axes: capability assessment, using advanced analytics to assess both industrial capabilities and market needs; operational support, including industrial operation management, manufacturing process optimization, and promotion of operational excellence; third, supply chain support, including supply chain management, identifying current and future strengths to develop manufacturing and technological opportunities; and finally, anchoring innovation, including business support to company to access for new opportunities or enabling innovation and develop new technology. So this slide shows a work that we have carried out last year for the offshore renewable energy catapult. The full report is available on their website. The analysis presented in this report evaluates the most promising alternative to the current supply chain in terms of technologies, automation, and logistics. This includes the transfer of technological and automation solutions from other industrial sectors and technological context. We looked at the manufacturing processes for the structural component of offshore wind turbine. We analyzed the current supply chain through 5 categories using 7 lenses. And finally, we analyzed the potential technological opportunities and evaluated them using 11 criteria. This slide shows on the left side a work carried out as part of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult Metal Forum in conjunction with the UK Metal Council. It consisted on exploring UK supply chains and value chains for 6 sectors. The map is the output of a database where each step of the supply chain has been populated with company names known to perform a manufacturing process in the UK. This is considered to be a product transformation step for material, component, or assembly. The purpose of this was to highlight the UK's ability to capture the value of product manufacture, and the map did not attempt to capture the flow of goods between the companies. On the right side of the slide, it's an internal piece of work that we have realized last year to understand the construction sector. This includes trends and drivers, industry size, impact of COVID and Brexit, the UK supply chain, the key companies, and the barriers. And lastly, I want to talk about technology. So in terms of developing technology, I would like just to introduce a live project that NMIS is currently running on additive manufacturing. This project, named Additive Manufacturing Business and Technology Support, or in a shorter way, AMBATS. This is an ERDF-funded project, part of the Scottish Enterprise AMCF portfolio. It aims to enable AM technology adoption and knowledge transfer on the process. AMBATS is free for Scottish SMEs and provide a range of off-the-shelf support packages that can be tailored to your business and engineering challenges. Project can scoped out and delivered from quick-fire 6-week engagement to more in-depth 6-month projects that we will work closely with you on. If you would like to know more details, the team will be happy to talk you through in more depth. Thank you for your time this morning. I hope the presentation gave you a good overview of the support NMIS could provide. Please do not hesitate to get in touch. And now back to you, John.
So thanks, Benoit. That was great. It gives an overview of the kind of capability NMIS can bring to bear on the topic. I think I would just add, to that, we've got a capability within our organisation which is able to identify potential supply chains. So there might be organisations out there that don't necessarily have the normal customer base of construction, but they have processes which could be adapted to become suppliers of the construction sector. And we have experience of identifying those kind of organisations and then working with them to adapt their process and technology so that they can actually deliver for a new market altogether. And I think the example I would cite is the one that the NMIS team got involved in and around the pandemic, when there was no supply of PPE in Scotland. And within a 3-month period, supported by others, we were able to identify a whole host of potential suppliers around Scotland, work with them to adapt their processes. And now, today, 80% of all the PPE required in Scotland, outside of rubber gloves, is supplied in Scotland, and it's created a supply chain, a new supply chain of about 250 million turnover per year. So I think that just shows the power of this kind of work. So I would just encourage people to recognise that it might be not that obvious how you would be sitting today in a position to supply some need in the construction industry, but it might be you've got a process that could be adapted. So that's the kind of adaptation support that NMIS can provide. I'm now going to hand over to Sam from the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, and Sam's going to talk to us about a couple of examples that have helped. So namely the opportunities coming from homegrown timber and off-site manufacturing and construction. So thanks for joining us, Sam. Over to you.
Thanks, John, and thank you, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to offer some highlights into some of the work the CSIC is doing around homegrown timber and the manufacturing of mass timber components using Scottish resources in construction. I've taken the liberty of assuming that the vast majority of people on the call here will be aware of Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, and obviously with the time, etc., looking to focus on some of the projects that we're carrying out at the moment. I think firstly it's important to recognise that we know Scotland has the expertise, the capabilities, and the natural resources to deliver a sustainable manufactured built environment in response to the declared climate crisis. We know this because our current transforming timber project represents the culmination of several years of ongoing collaborative research between project partners and stakeholders around the manufacture and assembly of mass timber components. And here you can see some of the research work that's gone on to develop existing buildings and projects. So whilst previous research has evidenced the suitability of homegrown timber relative to the UK's built environment, and by this I mean we're not looking at building 20-storey skyscrapers. What we're concentrating on at the moment is kind of low to medium rise projects. We decided it was time to understand how we could look to send our raw materials further up the value chain. So to do this, we used the principles of the 5 capitals model to assess and optimize the full process right the way from the forest floor up to the built environment. Furthermore, by incorporating design for manufacture and assembly and disassembly and reassembly, we can establish how to reuse timber following its original use and lock the carbon into our built environment for longer than its original 60-year engineered design life. So, for example, why are we using virgin raw materials for lower grade, lower value products such as packaging, pallets, and fencing? I think probably using the right processes and treatments, we could be manufacturing these products using reclaimed or recycled materials, and this way we would ensure our virgin natural resources are utilised for higher grade and higher value engineered products. So to do this, we utilised Innovate UK's Sustainable Innovation Fund and the Small Business Research Initiative to design a 2-phase research project. The first element of the project was a feasibility study to ensure that what we were proposing was technically possible. And this included the digital modelling of physical examples an assessment of the capabilities and capacities of the full supply chain. And the second phase, which we've just commenced, is focused around the actual manufacturing of the prototype, assessing every element of the procedure to gain as much data as we physically can. And this will ensure we know how best to fully optimize the process and subsequently create as robust a business case as we physically can for investment in the future. In addition, and through our industry partners on the project, we've secured several living lab examples. These will be manufactured in the same way as the prototype and will be fully censored. This will provide us with post-occupancy evaluation, and these feedback loops will go back to the digital twins. These will create the evidence base to prove that the building performs exactly as the computer modeling said it would. And then finally, at the end of the project, we've got the commercialization phase, and this is key to Innovate UK and the Scottish Government and the other enterprise agencies that we've been working with around looking at the potential for significant new manufacturing facilities that will service the UK markets. So this slide shows how our four main partners, our industry partners, Ecosystems Technologies, the University of Edinburgh, Edinburgh Napier University and CSIC, create that research, innovation and commercialization triangle that I spoke about on the previous slide. And it also begins to show some of the project's network effects and early adopters who are looking to support the project. And so I wanted to show this slide to highlight at the top there some of the impacts and outputs of the project. Now, these are based on the first 5 years of a potential new manufacturing facility of a predicted scale. And this facility manufacturing a specified number of homes to the market during the same period. But you can see, you know, figures such as 135 million kilos of carbon benefit, you know, over 8,000 jobs supported and over 30 million pounds in tax revenue generated for the Exchequer. So, you know, significant levels there. So the project prototype is a Synergy prototype. Synergy are a new housing developer backed by the energy giant Centrica, and they've created a new business model in terms of a subscription-based lifestyle. So the two-story home you can see is lifted from that standardized courtyard model there in the middle of the slide, and we'll be looking to manufacture this and bring it for demonstration across during COP26 in November. So as mentioned, the next few slides show us some of the manufacturing process that we've been running through and the types of data that we'll be gathering. You can see via the lamella preparation, this is some of the most important information for the project, because for our sawmilling partners, this data will tell them which forests in Scotland, for example, offer the most suitable raw materials for drying down to the required moisture content, how they optimize that process, how the drying process affects the whole life cycle analysis of the build, etc. And on the right there, you can see the CLT being manufactured at CSIC. We have the UK's only vacuum press. We're manufacturing walls there, CLT walls, somewhere in the region of about 13 meters in length by 3 meters in height. Here you can see the glue laminated timber floors being manufactured on the left, and then the nail laminated timber roofs manufactured on the right. These are particularly interesting because they were manufactured using beech nails, so timber nails used to nail these panels. So no metal has been used in the manufacture of any of the panels in any of the modules that you can see. Through the process, we created, or via the engineers and our industry partners, created a new glue laminated timber portal system, which effectively you can see acts as a cradle from the floor above. That will allow the clear span that you can see bottom right and becomes the supporting system and the separating wall for the rooms above. So IP generation there, which is obviously another important element for Innovate UK. There you can see the finished model. And then finally, just to wrap up, there's some other options that we are looking to incorporate these types of panels through. Some of you might be aware of the Near Homes project, a new platform approach developed with Transport Scotland to look to retrofit existing built assets using these locally sourced and homegrown sustainable materials. And perhaps the biggest potential client is the UK government via their Gen Zero project. It's a huge project looking to create net zero secondary schools in England. They have committed bold commitments to 200 schools a year for 10 years, so approximately 2,000 schools there, developed using a kit of parts system. And we are again developing the prototype for that in at CSIC, and that will also be developed and demonstrated across COP26. You can see some of the panels, again, glue laminated timber and cross laminated timber panels that would be used within that structure. And then finally, just to close, some exciting news this weekend. That is the UK's first ever homegrown mass timber panels going into commercial use at Fettes College. 6 new classrooms being installed there over the weekend, and they are, as I said, fully censored. They will provide us with full post-occupancy evaluation data, and then obviously help to inform the direction of travel and give us really good evidence to finalise our business case for investment in new manufacturing facilities. So that's me. John, I think back to you.
Thanks, Sam. That was great. Really interesting story there, and a real clear example of how you guys can make a practical and real impact of scale in such an important part of the supply chain, and obviously an important opportunity for Scotland itself. So thank you for that. That was a really interesting insight. I'm now going to hand over to Stephen Good, who's the CEO of the CSIC, and Stephen's going to take us through the next session, which is the panel session. Thanks. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everybody. Yes, I'm going to introduce Trina Tiernan and Jerome Finlayson in a second, but colleagues at CSIC who are running the show in the background here have asked me to introduce the first poll first, so it should be popping up on your screen just now. If I could just ask you to select one of the options, please, if you could vote. And it'll give us a very quick snapshot. There's about 70 attendees on the call just now, so it gives a very quick snapshot of what your immediate kind of gut feeling is around some of the challenges that we might face in terms of adopting greater manufacturing capability within construction. So, so if you don't mind just clicking on one of the options there you think is probably the biggest barrier. Organisers and panelists don't vote, as the note says at the bottom. Thank you. And we've got some results. Thank you for that. So yeah, really interesting. Fairly close between availability of skilled labour, lack of confidence in the pipeline. We can have some interesting conversations around that in a second with Trina, and material availability, supply chain issues, not so much around prohibitive investment and nothing around time to develop. So interesting. Thank you for that. There's another poll that we'll go to towards the end of this session. But for just now, if I can ask Trina and Jerome to join me, thank you. Jerome, first of all, you are Head of High Value Manufacturing at Scottish Enterprise, and Trina, Associate Director at Scottish Futures Trust. Both of you have been working very much across areas that are relevant to the conversation today. So some of the areas where Mr. Mackay touched on earlier, and both Sam and Benoit have touched on, I think there's some interesting things we'll maybe pick up. But Jerome, can I come to you first? As Head of High Value Manufacturing at Scottish Enterprise, I think some of the construction audience today will be really interested to hear where other sectors have adopted lean or digital approaches, perhaps to improve maybe process optimization or supply chain integration, for example. Could you tell us a little bit about what approaches you see coming through in the wider manufacturing space, and where, if at all, you see a role for these approaches in construction?
Yeah, John, thanks. So that's one area that's really close to my heart. If I look at the people who wrote the book Toyota on lean production, and I'm not an expert in construction by any means, so but I'd like to highlight a couple of things that are happening that I'm sure some people will know. So Toyota have a division called Toyota Homes in Japan, which build around, I think in 2016, 5,000 homes. 85% of the work is done off-site. Quality is best in class, affordability is best in class, sustainability is best in class, and the lead time is taken from around 5 to 6 months down to 40 to 50 days. And what I see in manufacturing, and my old team, or my ex-team SMAS, the Scottish Manufacturing Advisory Service, of which I think a couple of guys are on the call, we've worked with many companies across the length and breadth of Scotland, and some in construction, some out with construction, and where we've seen real, let's say, step changes in productivity has been where businesses have been able to apply a lean, some of the lean principles and some of the lean tools and techniques. So in its simplest form is really creating flow and sequence. This isn't about technology or investing huge amounts of CapEx. It's about reorganizing and restructuring the workflow to ensure that you have smaller batches, you don't stockpile materials, you use what's needed and have what you call that just-in-time approach. Focus on getting it right first time, so we don't rework and don't fix things. We stop and find the problem, improve it if possible, and get it right first time, or strive to get it right first time, and keep that principle of sort of value by eliminating waste and creating flow. So I think that's one area certainly that construction sector could learn from the manufacturing sector. And finally, just some numbers on that. If we look at the productivity metrics, GVA per employee hour worked, I think in the construction sector we're around 55k, so £55,000 for every labour hour worked. And then you look at some of the, it's an unfair comparison, I know, but automotive sector UK is around 420,000, so it's more, 4 times as much. The whisky industry in Scotland's around 250,000. So we do have some very high productivity. Not surprisingly, that's where we see lean and some of these principles being applied very strongly.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the areas where, in comparison to a lot of other sectors, I think construction actually performs quite well in a productivity sense, and then you put it against some of the best in class, and I think it emphasises where there's still some room for improvement, clearly. One of the points the Minister highlighted earlier on, Jerome, was around the kind of key supply chain challenges and some of the drivers for that. Drawing on your experience then, where do you see perhaps the key opportunities lying within construction? Is it around off-site manufacturing, tightening up those supply chains, longer term procurement partnerships, and that aspect of sharing risk and reward? Where do you see the key opportunities perhaps?
Yeah, I'll maybe split that into two, because right now, anyone who's in construction, I'm sure that there's some very immediate supply chain opportunities the Minister highlighted at the beginning. So that's got to be the real here and now focus, is getting through those supply chain opportunities. And there's basically five or probably 6 key areas there. Timber supply. So the Minister's spoken with companies like BSW, James Jones, to understand the problem in more detail. Apparently they're saying that round timber, if they can receive more round timber, they have processing capacity. However, then if you increase the round timber, then the Forest and Land Scotland, who are planting trees, let's say, might have a shortfall in round timber because that's a longer lead time there. Then the second area is concrete and cement. Tarmac, main cement producer in Scotland, similar issues around timber. And again, that's affected by a global demand. Steel, again, is the third category, which we're looking at, an issue that seems to have dropped down the list as a challenge, but still a significant challenge. And I think we've got multi-metals on the call who have responded to the Minister's call to arms in terms of how can we help. But they're, I think, seeing lead times quoted of around 52 weeks for sheet aluminium, and so that's a real challenge. Again, another global issue that's affecting that, with the shortfall in raw materials coming in from South America, Africa, China, etc. The fourth area is plastic drainage supplies, major issue around the supply of underground waste drainage. A number of companies the Minister and the team have been speaking to. The fifth one is logistics. Logistics is mainly down to the shortfall of HGV drivers. and you need to read the news to see what's happening there. A lot of HGV drivers have gone back to Europe, and the lack of licenses to allow them to return. There's a major backlog of HGV testing as well. Supermarkets, online suppliers offering big bonuses to start HGV drivers. And the last area which needs a bit further investigation is chemicals, in specific chemicals used in construction. So we're working with people like Calichem and Grangemouth to understand options around that. So that's probably the 6 areas: timber, concrete, steel, plastic, drainage, supplies, logistics, and chemicals, immediate areas. But I think in the medium to long term, we need to start looking at the point we made earlier around not just off-site construction, because that might not be suitable for the customization that's required in our construction sector, but in general terms, how do we apply lean principles, lean thinking, and also use some of the smart ways of connecting devices, people, using data more effectively, and also automating where we can.
Super. Thank you, Jerome. Yeah, I think in that context, I guess there is no shortage of capability, and a number of speakers earlier have spoken about that. I guess it's about aligning that capability with the short-term opportunity. So as Joe and others have mentioned earlier, how do companies perhaps with the right capability but deploying solutions into different sectors just now maybe gear up to pivot that and support construction sector domestically? And there's a lot of conversations going on around that, and I know the work that the team at the Innovation Centre are focused on, as Sam's highlighted some of it there, is very much looking across the areas where there is innovation, manufacturing innovation taking place. There's the opportunity to create new products, solutions to supply into the construction supply chain, but it's about perhaps the acceleration of that in the short term. It's certainly capable of being developed medium to long term, but in that short term, and conscious that the couple of speakers have mentioned the PPE opportunities last year, clearly one of the critical objectives in construction, like most sectors going forward from the experience of COVID and Brexit and other things, is to build more resilience within our Scottish supply chain. And the PPE example from last year shows what can be done in a relatively short space of time, albeit completely, accepting that procuring a limited number of PPE components is quite different from a hospital or a school. Where do you think we could adopt some of those, or where the lessons do you think we could particularly learn from that PPE experience that would benefit us within construction, given the model's quite different?
Yeah, and I know John Reid highlighted the successes of working with critical PPE through the pandemic, and I led a small team with Scottish Enterprise and SMAS as well, worked very closely with the team at NMIS and with NHS. And I suppose some of the key lessons, because what we did was we really, this was a time where we were running out of critical PPE. Obviously, anyone who saw the news knew that. So there was a real strong call to arms on this, and I think the number of manufacturing companies that stepped forward and said, we can help, we're not sure exactly how, but we think we can repurpose our process, we've got capacity. And then between SMAS, NMIS and others, we sort of really got in about these companies and worked very closely and very intensely to understand what could be delivered. So having that sort of open mindset that, that I know it's a bit of a cliche, but that can-do approach really helps, and thinking quite laterally about the options. The other thing as well is, from a procurement point of view, if you take the NHS, for example, is not just focused through the lens of price, but obviously what's the cost, because if we have a shorter supply chain, there's obviously a resilience value, there's an environmental value as well, and it's factoring the total cost of supply into these options, which then, when you start looking at the total cost of supply, we can actually become quite competitive with just looking at price from, let's say, lower cost labor economies like China, etc., and India, where we're competing strongly in PPE. I think as well, having very clear dialogue and very open lines of communication between, let's say, NHS in that case, the main buyer, the suppliers, and support agencies all working together to iron out identify problems, solve problems quickly, and come to solutions that work, for all parties. That was another key learning in there as well. And also through Scottish Enterprise, I think we used effectively Scottish Development International reach, where we have 250 staff over 42 countries. So we used our connections internationally to leverage support for some of the global supply chains that we needed to shorten, and indeed and use that more effectively. So yeah, so some really key, some good lessons learned. I'd be more than happy to share that in more detail with anyone else on the back of this call.
I'm sure that will be really useful for a lot of people that have joined this call, and indeed for those that are working in the background extremely hard to try and address some of these challenges and bring some innovative solutions to bear. There's no shortage of areas of complexity in this that need to be overcome. I wonder whether I always mention this when we talk about transformation. Andrew Rosenholm, who used to be the chair of Construction Leadership Council UK level, wrote a paper a number of years ago on the back of the financial crash 2008, and it was called "Never Waste a Good Crisis." And it feels like that kind of crisis footing and that approach in an emergency setting is what allowed us to do a lot of things very nimbly in and around the PPE challenge last year. I just wonder whether we have that same mindset at the moment around this crisis that we're facing, and whether there's more perhaps we need to do to actually really encourage businesses who do have the capability but might need the support to change direction slightly or broaden their capability. Just can we bring to bear with enterprise agencies that can support NMIS ourselves, government, more directly? Do we think all of the right pieces of the jigsaw are coming together in the right way to really capitalise on that at the moment?
Yeah, no, there's probably a few questions in there, Stephen, but let me give that a go. So the crisis, the global pandemic was certainly a crisis, but we're actually, if we think about it and take a step back, we're living through a crisis just now, which is an environmental crisis. It's just that the timeline of impact on the environmental crisis isn't as imminent. There's not a report saying there's so many people dying every day as there was in the coronavirus crisis. Now, I'm not saying that would solve the problem. However, what we learned in the coronavirus crisis, in the global pandemic, certainly March, April last year, things were achieved that were seemed to be impossible, literally, from the way we scaled up testing, the track and trace, the way we supplied critical PPE. There's a laboratory in Glasgow, the Lighthouse Lab, which is the highest volume lab in the UK, if not one of the highest in the world, and the most operationally effective. It was built and operationalized in 4 months with 750 staff, highly qualified scientific staff. You'd never dream of even putting a plan together like that. So what was the magic ingredients there? Yep, the crisis, let's say, in that context, fueled bias for action. But what we had was a real bias for action. And one of the things I learned certainly from that is what really worked was this sort of plan, do, check, act methodology in thinking and in doing. So it moved people from brainstorming, because you didn't have time to put post-its on a flip chart and think about it, to try storming, which is let's just try it and do it. And doing that plan, do, check, act methodology. And I'm oversimplifying this very much. I mean, there's a lot of scientific thought went into a lot of this. But plan something, take a small step, do and implement, try storm it, check the impact that it's had, what do you need to change, modify, and then go back to that plan, do, check, act cycle and repeat that, fail faster, learn from the mistakes and get better and better. I think that was a real key learning through the whole pandemic, if that can be continued to be applied.
Super. Yeah, so more action, quicker, I guess, is the message there. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jerome, for contribution. Trina, turning to you. Appreciate you've been waiting patiently, and I thought we'd split this into sort of 2 chunks, so the next 10 minutes is all yours. But one of the key enablers, and actually Benoit mentioned it in his one of his slides earlier, where he identified visibility as being a key component of resilience. And that kind of approach, I suppose, the key enablers of building a more resilient supply chain, and more generally the sectors that's capable of investing in new advanced manufacturing approaches, technology, innovation, workforce development, is ensuring that there is a clear line of sight into the future as best that can be predicted in terms of demand, and what you've been working on around that demand side picture, and have developed the pipeline tool with your colleagues at Scottish Futures Trust as part of the Construction Leadership Forum Recovery Plan. Could you share with the audience a little bit about what the pipeline tool is and why it was developed?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Stephen. So yeah, you're dead right, and it was really telling to see that coming back on the poll. It really is a key thing in terms of giving industry that kind of key transparency and line of sight in terms of what is coming forward in the future. So this has long been recognised as an ask from industry. As ever with the pandemic, came some urgency and came a recognition that this was really critical in terms of giving industry that line of sight and giving them something in terms of that to really aid the recovery piece. So on the back of that, it was a key recommendation in the Construction Recovery Plan. Scottish Futures Trust, along with partners across industry and the public sector, developed the Construction Pipeline Forecast Tool. So the Forecast Tool looks to set out really a forward-looking pipeline of construction projects right across Scotland. It really looks to try and I suppose anticipate spend right up to kind of 3 to 5 years into the future, and we look to try and expand that even further as we go through future iterations. But we essentially went live with it in July. That was on the back of probably 6 to 9 months of hard grind in terms of building the system, but also speaking to our public sector partners, helping them to recognise the issue that was there, and encouraging them to put forward and bring forward their data to help them to help build the tool. And so, as I said, we went live in July. At the time, there were 33 contributing authorities that amounted to about 1,100 projects with a total value of about 8.5 billion. So it really was a fantastic kind of start to all of it. And what we have tried to do within it is it gives some real clarity and useful tools and dashboards to help people kind of easily digest the data that's there and make best use of it for their own purposes. In terms of just an overview as to what the tool does, we have as I said, we've produced a dashboarding function where we represent the data in various forms. So first of all, just in terms of a general summary, just to give that really kind of overarching view as to what data sits within the system and where that sits across the various sectors. Beyond that, we give a geographical representation, so what's coming forward in various parts of the country, and if there's certain areas that are more relevant to yourself, you can kind of zone in on that. Beyond that, we do provide a bit more information around the timelines for these projects, so in terms of what's starting and finishing, and so people can kind of look at their order books and see where things might be, good opportunities for them. And then beyond that, there's a detailed function list, which essentially just gives you some really key project information, which just may not have been available in the one place previously, and looks to try and identify things like what projects haven't as yet appointed a tier 1 contractor, for example, or where projects are really in the early stages of development. So really points people to really good opportunity, and where there's likely to be opportunity on the ground to kind of make inroads and speak to the right people. So as I said, went live in July, and it's been great. There's been great uptick since.
Fantastic. And just on that then, so launched in July, you mentioned there was a kind of cohort of partners that were involved in kind of pre-launch to make sure it was populated with useful data to begin with. What have you seen since July? I appreciate it's not a huge amount of time, but what have you seen since July in terms of use levels and take-up and general feedback perhaps from any users?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So far we're sitting at it's probably just over 500 registrations. And that seems to be kind of fairly active users actually from what we're seeing in the background. So it has been really good, and those users have kind of seen it from across the piece. So in terms of lots of consultancy organisations, a number of tier 1 contractors are involved, loads and loads of suppliers, and just the smaller trades bodies as well, etc., being involved. So there's a really good spread in terms of the uptake. What I would say in terms of the feedback we've had so far has been that everyone wants to see more detail, everyone wants kind of more and more into the future, and what we'll be looking to do, I suppose, going forward around it is just to see where we can kind of, I suppose, push that to the fore in terms of getting more members involved, and also I suppose to see if there's kind of there's more analysis we can do on the data that's there, and given the feedback we've received to date.
Excellent. And I should have mentioned to all the listeners today. The link to the pipeline tool, which is free to access, is in the chat, and is also accessible from SFT's website and shared across a number of other websites as well. You can access it from CSIC website too. So definitely encourage people to explore it, and appreciate, you'd be keen to get further feedback and input from others that are using the tool, just to see if there's any, I suppose, road test it in this early stage to see what other features could potentially be built into that moving forward.
So yeah, so absolutely. So what I should have mentioned is what we aim to do with the tool is to provide 6 monthly updates. So that's not just, I suppose, updating the existing data, plugging any gaps and just updating it to the current day form, but also what we're looking to do is obviously encourage more contributors to the table, and we're already having lots of conversations around that, and we're going to have some dedicated resource applied to that as well, in terms of just kind of having those conversations and getting people comfortable and bringing them on board. And so absolutely, what we will be looking to do is just see what functionality is of best use, see if we can build on that, and beyond that, just really see if we can grow the numbers, not just from a contributing side, but also from registrations, and making sure that those who really need access to a tool like this, that they're getting best use and they're aware that it's out there.
First class, excellent. So that's what's in store in the future for the pipeline tool, 6 monthly updates and advancements as and when necessary. To any of the maybe public sector organisations that are on the call today, or any of the industry partners that are perhaps not using it yet, what would be your ask to them in terms of engagement around it? What would be your 30-second pitch, I suppose, to folk that haven't experienced it yet, to get them engaged?
Absolutely. No, well, I would say firstly, and I've seen that there are some public bodies on the call today, and I'm pretty sure all of them are currently contributing. So I would really just encourage you to continue to do so, and to really, I suppose, challenge yourselves as to how far into the future we can look, and how kind of, I suppose, ambitious we can be about, in terms of the types of projects we put forward, and just having a level of confidence and to kind of support the industry in that area. And what I would just say for those on the call, in terms of just from an industry perspective, it's free to log on, register, and have a play about with it. We are an open door in terms of feedback, so please do come back to us with any of your comments and questions, etc. And as I say, we did something here quite quickly on the back of something that was really required as an urgent need, but we have, I suppose, a bit of breathing space to try and get the update going, but also then see what we can do to kind of make this even more valuable to yourselves. So just be forthcoming, and it's an open door.
Thank you, Gina. And I guess just to close out this part of the session, I guess one of the big opportunities here is now with a more definitive look into the future around what the public sector pipeline ask is going to look like. So how are we going to be developing both existing and a new built environment in Scotland moving forward? What the public sector clients looking to do around that? It should give industry, the entire industry supply chain, greater insight, I suppose, into what's coming, and that should hopefully encourage businesses to be able to make some more certain decisions, I guess, around their investments, perhaps in areas that relate back to the early part of the conversation, around areas where potentially we're looking for new innovative manufacturing capability in Scotland to be developed, or indeed to grow new markets completely. And I guess it's areas perhaps where some of these clients are maybe through their own zero carbon strategies, for example, looking at the opportunities for natural products, natural materials, local supplied components, product solutions. Indeed, Sam's highlighted some of the opportunities around homegrown timber as a structural solution, perhaps in public sector non-domestic buildings as well as domestic buildings. There's an opportunity to get a better line of sight around what the demand for that might be, and then with companies, some of which we're obviously already engaged with, but others having a bit more confidence that actually this would be a much safer bet potentially to invest in those spaces. I think this is another really, really important part of that kind of toolkit, I suppose, we're trying to build to provide the industry clients in Scotland with that kind of forward vision. So fantastic. That's really well done to you and the team for pulling together a fantastic job. I would encourage everybody that hasn't done so yet to jump onto the chat, click the link, and follow through and have a good look around what the pipeline tool can offer. And as Trina's identified, more than keen to get feedback and suggestions and comments, so that on that kind of twice yearly cycle of updates we can capture as many relevant areas as possible. Thank you, Trina. Thank you, Jerome, for that session. I think we're just about on time to move on to now the second poll. If I just introduce that just now. I'm saying that to my colleagues in the background, so I hope we're going to pop up the second poll. Yep, there we go. To the second poll, where do you see the biggest opportunities for manufacturing and construction? So again, as before, if members in the audience could select all this time, all of the options that they think are most relevant. So where do you see the biggest opportunities for manufacturing within the construction space? Another couple of seconds if people can identify their selections before we move on to the next session. That's great, thank you. So there you go. Quick poll, appreciate, but useful in terms of feedback. So again, around create new market opportunities and improve productivity, coming out on top, closely followed by deliver. Oh, lost it. It's gone. One of the third ones was there. Hopefully you managed to screen grab it if possible. Listen, thank you very much again to Jerome and Trina. I'm now joined back by all of the speakers from earlier. So John has been hosting, Sam, Benoit, Jerome and Trina, welcome back to this audience Q&A session. So I'll do my best. The questions are flying in thick and fast, so I'll run through as many as I can. Apologies to all the audience members if I don't get through all of them. But if I can kick off with the first question that's come in here. So it's a question, Sam, for you. Are any of the Scottish manufacturers looking at solutions for retrofit of existing homes? So maybe if you want to talk about the context of some of what you're involved in a more widely in the recent sector.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question because we know those startling figures around, I think it's 80%, isn't it, of the built environment is already built that we'll have in 2045. So yeah, there's a lot of specific work going on around that, and I guess from my perspective and the homegrown perspective, we are working fairly closely with the Scottish Government Supply Chain Development Programme to look at these supply chains and identify products and components. For example, wood fibre insulation that we can look to utilise within retrofits. Similar to the mass timber issue, there are no wood fibre insulation manufacturing facilities in the UK. Everything is imported from Europe. We know, I know Jerome and the Minister highlighted the issues around supply at the moment. So if we can look to bring these types of products, obviously from a carbon perspective, huge benefits. From a home manufacturing perspective, big benefits. And similarly, there's another project that works quite nicely in this between Csic collaborating with ENMIS on a European project in New Zero, looking at robotic and automated Industry 4.0 blueprint processes. The project, I think, is committed to around about 15,000 homes being retrofitted per annum using a kit of parts, wall and roof system, facade panels. So there's a really good opportunity there to take the learnings from that project, bring them back to, because it's a pan-European project, bring those back to Scotland, and then look to partner with our industry partners to move those forwards from a Scottish perspective.
Super. And I know certainly from a lot of the inquiries that we receive in an innovation centre, almost on a daily basis, I guess now, a huge focus around retrofit, a huge focus around that kind of elephant in the room of how do we tackle the existing stock, whether it's domestic or non-domestic. And in there, I think lie huge opportunities, not just, if you take housing as an example, 2.4 million homes in Scotland need energy efficiency upgrades as well as decarbonising heat solutions to be deployed, and and you're looking at 26 million homes across the UK. The opportunities for Scottish companies that are investing in innovative solutions, natural, healthy solutions that we can manufacture locally, but then export to the rest of the UK, potentially export internationally, I think is massive. There's no shortage of opportunity coming down the tracks around that. So yeah, I think for companies out there that are thinking about it, certainly between Enmis, ourselves, Scottish Enterprise and other agencies, there's certainly opportunities to access the right kind of support to help take that forward. A number of you might be familiar with Indy Nature, who received £3 million worth of support to set up their natural insulation manufacturing capability down in the Borders, just announced a couple of weeks ago. So huge opportunities, I think, to do that kind of thing at scale, and no shortage of demand, as we know. Next question is for perhaps John or Benoit. What is the easiest way for companies to engage with Enmis?
Yeah, I can take it if you want, John. So I think the easiest way to engage is to go on the Enmis website. We have a get in touch inquiry team who will help you define what you want to talk about with us. But in terms of supply chain, what we have been talking about today, my contact details will be displayed with the recording. And to emphasize on what has been said before on visibility and on our aspect of looking at processes and technology. So if you contact me and my team, the first step we are doing is assessing the capability of the company. And by doing that, there is two levels on this. We are helping the company to identify potential markets or potential sectors they can move on just now. But we are also identifying potential technology that could help those companies to move into those new sectors, and then we can help support them through Enmis to go through that journey. And on the second level, by doing those assessment of company, we are creating a picture, a landscape view of the capabilities within Scotland, within the UK, and then we can go back to government and government agency and give them a wider picture and identify gaps and help them to define what next step we should take in order to develop the supply base and the different supply chains. Sorry, I diverted a bit from the question.
No, that's absolutely makes sense. And actually, I'll just build on it slightly for everybody's benefit that one of the key things that we all have been working on in the background as I suppose parts of that kind of innovation support landscape in a wider sense in Scotland is to make sure that no matter what door people come in through, we're all as connected as we can be in terms of making sure that people can then get to the right part of support. So just wanted to mention that. John, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Benoit was saying. Obviously, Enmis is developing its capabilities as we speak. But one of the things we're very conscious of is the large number of SMEs in Scotland. 95% of the manufacturing sector in Scotland are SMEs, and many of the companies on the call today are SMEs. We've recognised the need to put resource in front of that. So we've actually recruited a 10-person SME specialist team. So in terms of how to connect with Enmis, Benoit's right. We've got a website. Just come on the website. But hopefully, we are now in a position to actually enact these various inquiries because we've got a resource there that's dedicated to developing opportunities with the SME population around Scotland.
Excellent. Thank you, John. I think that's really important, that kind of early sort of triage stage, I guess, for businesses. And I know a lot of organisations have got that approach of helping everybody understand, I guess, just what support they need and how best to access it. And is the question that they're asking potentially around what they need really the key question? Are there other areas that experts in your team can help them potentially identify as well? So really valuable from that point of view. Thank you. A couple of other questions coming through I want to get to before we run out of time. A question I'll come to everybody maybe around this one. What are the opportunities to support some of the supply chain challenges highlighted across? Questions have just jumped. Apologies. What are the opportunities to support some of the supply chain challenges highlighted across the sector? Jerome, I don't know, maybe do you want to come in on that one first, and then I'll bring in Sam here.
Yeah. As I highlighted earlier, there is a working group which the Minister McKee has set up and we have people from Scottish Enterprise who know the construction sector well. I believe members of the construction industry as well, and I'm actually not personally on the group, so I'm not close to the details of the the working group. But I would recommend linking into that group, so I can provide details on how to do that for people who want to get who feel that they have an opportunity to support and get directly involved. And that group specifically looking at the immediate supply chain challenges.
I think either directly through some of us or indirectly through our colleagues or networks, we can help anybody who does potentially have some solutions or some ideas around how to develop solutions that might support the supply chain challenges. We can connect them into the correct conversation. So we'll put, as we're going to share obviously the details of this online afterwards, but we can make sure that everybody's contact details are on there as well, and we'll undertake to follow up everybody and connect everybody into the right conversations as best we possibly can. Tina, anything from your point of view you want to add to that around how to access or bring some of the support around the opportunities?
Apologies, I was muted there. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I suppose I would point again to the forecast tool, in that there's just a real, I suppose, valuable set of information there, which should give it, and it's probably more in terms of medium to long term and kind of in preparation, but to be thinking about, I suppose, how you can, better prepare your supply chain and for what's coming forward. So again, I would very much direct, and I would see that definitely the medium term element of all of this can certainly be helped by having that kind of that view and being able to plan better and ensure that we're better equipped going forward. And I suppose what we're doing with the immediate, but we also need to look further down the road. So again, we just absolutely encourage you to kind of have a go, have a look, and see what you can do in terms of the insight that's there already.
Excellent. Thank you, Tina. Okay, I'm conscious I've got about 2 or 3 minutes left. 2 questions I want to get to. There's a quick pre-one, Benoit, a request to come in if you could provide the link to the catapult report that you referred to. So we'll maybe pop that into the follow-up information as well, but that would be appreciated. Thank you. And maybe one for Sam. What do you see as the key factors in resistance to off-site manufacturing against traditional build methods in construction?
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, I think they're reducing as we move forward. But obviously, there's a division of or the oversight of pipeline surety. How can we look to give organisations both in the private and public sector more sight of what's coming through? There's a scale of the capital investment required. Obviously, when you're talking about off-site manufacturing, we're talking about full facilities, etc. So it's a significant outlay of funds. I guess the traditional construction business model is different around cash flow, etc. Guidance, as I say, guidance is improving, and again, conversations like this specifically with CSIC and NMIS around manufacturing processes and design, production, assembly, etc. So organisations like ours on the call are ideally suited to support that. And then the kind of standard resistance to change. But as I said, I think every day we're moving closer. We get more commitment from both the UK and Scottish government around off-site manufacturing and more evidence to prove the efficiencies and benefits and savings, etc. on those. So there are barriers that still exist, but I think we're slowly breaking them down.
And one thing, again, for audience members to be aware of, there is a strategy that's been developed between industry and government around how offsite manufacturing can play a role in reducing carbon emissions. So that is due to be developed, or is in the process of being developed, due to be consulted upon and implemented towards the latter part of the year. So at a strategic sense, there's an approach that's relatively fresh around offsite manufacturing and its role within the construction space. Thank you. Last question, I'll throw to a couple of you very briefly, if you could be as brief as you can with your answers. How do the panel think that both the construction sector and the manufacturing sectors in Scotland are prepared for producing carbon reduction plans, especially with the changes coming towards the end of September in terms of government contracts? John, I don't know if you want to give us a quick answer on that.
So I think, I mean, it's a challenge we've all got, and you know, one of the issues that we are seeing with manufacturers is that there's a lack of capability to define the baseline. So where do you start? You know, where are we today, and what do we do next? In terms of the processes, there are lots of capabilities coming online now. Much of the work that we're doing in NMIS and will do in the future is around the net zero agenda. So more than 50% of our technical focus is around technologies that will support the net zero targets in Scotland and for organisations. But I think right now there are some obvious things that we can do. So Jerome talked about optimisation and waste reduction, you know, the good old-fashioned things that you can do without spending money. So organisations and companies can be working on that now. You don't need new technology to do that. So with the combination of support from organisations like SMAS and ourselves, there are things we can do now to reduce our carbon footprints. There is work being done by our team and ScotGov on how to actually do that baseline in terms of carbon measured, and that will help us drive deeper into the opportunities and actions. And then there's a whole swathe of technologies that are coming behind it, and huge opportunities there as well. Hydrogen, electrification, batteries, etc. So you know, there's a lot to come down the pipe. But at the moment, I would encourage organisations to be working on how to do better with what you've got.
Absolutely, thank you, John. Yeah, I would echo that. I think there's a lot that we can all do, I guess, in terms of our own getting our own house in order in that sense. I suppose in terms of the external landscape for construction sector is very much driven by that pipeline of opportunity coming down the road. So what does that look like? What are the clients expecting? Because we're an industry that responds to client demand. So how's that demand being shaped around carbon reduction? And I think, again, just to emphasise the point that not all the solutions are unknown to us. You know, there are a lot of opportunities to deploy things we already know work really effectively in this space. And likewise, as John's touched on, from a CSIC point of view, you know, our entire mission is focused now around how we help build that innovation culture that drives the transition to net zero. So from an innovation centre point of view, and I know this is shared by a number of innovation centres, our focus is very much around that just transition to net zero. So the support is certainly there. And if we can connect you to the right parts of the landscape, we'll do so. Thank you, everybody, panelists, please, for your contributions. Very much appreciated. I'll hand back to John in terms of wrap up. I noticed that most of the contact details I think will be put in the chat, so we'll follow up again, obviously at the end with any other piece of information. But John, to close out, back over to you, thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. So just in terms of wrapping up the session we've had this morning, we started out with Ivan, and obviously Ivan clearly restated the challenge and the issues, and I guess you guys didn't need to hear about that, but that's the reality. We have got a significant problem on our hands, and I think it came out clearly from his description of what Scottish Government are going to do and what their intentions are, that there is some real significant support there, which is obviously going to be important now and going forward. Also, what came out of that introduction was, and we talked about earlier on, throughout any sort of crisis, there's also great opportunities, and this is an opportunity if we can grab it for Scottish suppliers, manufacturers and construction. Maybe we can come out of this better and stronger. We then moved into the presentations from Benoit and Sam, and that was really all about how can we adapt and develop our capabilities and processes, both from a technology point of view and a construction point of view. So the manufacturing and construction angles of both sides of that question. And clearly there is capability within CSIC and NMIS to support companies that want to engage with us. Then we went into the panel conversations, and Jerome highlighted, and I reiterated it myself there, you know, that there are opportunities to be more effective and efficient, and the support that can come from organisations like SE and SMAS. Convening the network is an important part, and that came out strongly as well, and I think that's something that certainly NMIS has got a track record on, and myself and Jerome signposted the work that was done on PPE. That didn't happen because of one organisation. It happened because of a cluster of organisations with the same focus. So I think there's an agenda here around how do we convene the network going forward to make sure we have a joined up, focused effort that can deliver. So Fiona then talked about some of the capability that's coming online to help organisations plan and forecast better where the opportunities and work is coming from. So the construction pipeline forecast tool, and I think there was a link put up for everyone to look at that. So that gives better visibility to allow for improved planning. So that's another way of doing better with what we've got. I think that, so overall, I think we have significant challenges, but we also have significant opportunities. I think it was a really interesting session, and one of the things that I'm determined is, if I was sitting on the other end of the line, you know, there's an opportunity to say, so what? You know, we've had a nice conversation, we've said lots of good stuff. We need to enact on this, we need to make this happen. So I think it's down to NMIS and CSIC to continue the momentum that we've started today and make sure that we actually make something happen. And we can act in the first instance in terms of animators or individual contacts to companies who need some technical support or some other advice or help in a given area. So I think we managed to present the problem and then present where all the support is coming from, and that there is a real determination to help. So I'd like to just thank the audience for joining, because obviously, you know, nothing's going to happen without you guys being on board, and for the questions that you posed and the comments that we've grabbed in the comments section. And as I said earlier on, we may not have been able to cover everything today, but we will certainly bring that to bear in terms of the work that goes next. There's a few links that you've been posted during the session. Please remember to use those and download the handouts while you're on the call. And the last thing I would say is your feedback is really important. We're here to help you. This is what it's all about. So please take some time to engage with the various opportunities to feedback and get involved. We're here to help. So I'd just like to thank everyone for getting involved today, and the speakers, and to wish everyone luck, because no doubt there's a lot of challenges facing all of us going forward. So thank you very much for your time. Hopefully that was of use to you. Bye-bye.